All right, welcome, welcome, welcome. For everybody who's watching now with me and who's watching on the replay, wherever you are, sending you so much love. Thank you for choosing to be in this space with me today. I've been very excited to share this with you. Some of you might have watched the video I did previously called The Story of the Stars that will kind of connect with this tonight. But I really wanted to go into the language of this word, Astrosophy. What is this? And so tonight's going to be a lot about language and about what is Astrosophy and the rebirth of Christ, cosmic Christ, Christ consciousness, what's happening on the planet right now. And so, yeah, we're going to start. And let me see here. Yeah. Beautiful. Okay. So, Astrosophy. The meaning of Astrosophy is the wisdom of the stars aligned with Christ. And tonight is going to be a lot about language because language is so important and language can be really triggering for people. Especially right now, we're navigating this new world in a lot of ways. And I grew up, a little bit about my background, I grew up in the Baptist church as a preacher's daughter. My grandfather was a preacher, my dad was a preacher, my great-grandfather, and so on and so on. So I grew up with a certain language that's connected to Christian culture. And then I left the church later on in my teenage years and sought a spiritual path of following lots of different spiritual teachers and taking my own path. And for me, then I had a lot of words that were triggering to me. I couldn't use the word God for a long time. So you might relate to that. And so tonight we're going to be talking a lot about language and the feeling behind it, the meanings behind it, and how the meanings of certain languages have been disconnected from their original meanings. So Astrosophy is actually something new in the last 100 years that connects us with the original ancient astrology. And we're going to learn all about that tonight. So this is a sacred remembering. We are in a rebirth of the divine feminine. We know this. In the last 100 years, we've seen the feminine movement come to fruition. We've seen Mary Magdalene's teachings be found, and there's a rebirth of the divine feminine that's happening. Astrosophy plays a role in that divine feminine, the Sophia. Okay, that's what we're going to dive into tonight. So this time will come when ancient astrology will live again in a new form, this time aligned with Christ as in the beginning. And we'll contemplate this through our heart. And then we'll once again look up at the stars in curiosity and awe of their spiritual script. In other words, the story that the stars are writing with us. And we will remember. And I believe that that time is now. And if we study the cycles of the stars, we see that written in the stars. We see this mirroring happening. And that is the gift of the stars as this ancient map that we used to live our lives by. And that ancient map has also been corrupted. And we're going to talk about that. So first tonight, when we're diving into all this together, my prayer is that these thoughts be guides for us to contemplate and that none of this becomes another dogma. I left the church because it was such a dogma this is the only way, this is right, this is wrong. There was so much judgment that disconnected people that I fled from that. And then when I started studying these different sciences, spiritual sciences, different forms of spirituality, you can see a dogma in them as well. And so I can see now that astrology has become a dogma. Human design has become a dogma. The gene keys has become a dogma. So none of this is meant to be a dogma, something that we hold on to as this is the truth, but this is the only way. These are meant to be contemplated. So everything that I am bringing through tonight is meant for us to contemplate in curiosity and to know that the truth is written on our hearts, so we know that. So I wanted to begin with that prayer tonight. Astrosophy is connected to the life of Yeshua and Mary Magdalene. We'll talk about Mary Magdalene later. We don't know as much in written history of her life in the stars, but I am on a quest for that. But the life of Yeshua is absolutely written in the stars. And this is something that I was always curious about. If Yeshua's story is written in the stars, then why would not mine not be? The star, the Magi always drew me, even though astrology was totally woo-woo and like the devil's work growing up in the church, forbidden to dive into astrology in that way. But here I am. This has been my calling. You know what it's like when something is called on, you're called upon something and it's on your heart and you can't deny it. This is me with this work. I cannot deny it. I actually woke up. I've been working in astrology, human design, and gene keys for many years. But the way that I work in these sacred sciences came to me about 2 years ago in the middle of the night, around 3:30 in the morning, when I woke up to the word Christ astrology and dove into this. And this is when I found Astrosophy. So to see the life of Yeshua in relationship to the world of stars opens this door for us to profound experiences of the cosmos, the cosmic Christ. And it gives us a rise to this new star wisdom that will reconnect us with what the ancient star wisdom was in the spiritual science of the cosmic Christ. Braiding Sweetgrass is one of my favorite books. If you've not read Braiding Sweetgrass and you're a lover of the earth, you will love this book. It is a written prayer love story to the earth, written by an Indigenous woman named Robin Wall Kimmerer. If you have youth, there's a youth version of this book, and it's phenomenal. It's one of my favorite books ever. I might actually do a book club on it. This is one of my favorite quotes she has. Action on behalf of life transforms us because the relationship between self and the world is reciprocal. It's not a question of first getting enlightened or saved and then acting. As we work to heal the earth heals us. This has to do with relationship. Our relationship with the stars has to do with our relationship with earth, has to do with our relationship with nature, has to do with our relationship with God, with ourselves and one another. It is about mutual reciprocity and mutual relationship. And somewhere along the line, we became disconnected from our relationship with the stars. And we're going to talk about that. We follow a map now that was a map that was written 2,000 years ago that is absolutely out of alignment with actually where the stars were. So somewhere along the line, this disconnection happened. And it began soon after the life of Jesus. The astrology part of this began. We see this disconnection little by little by little until the last 100 years. It was just exaggerated and moved a lot faster through the Industrial Revolution and this disconnection from nature. So Astrosophy is the wisdom of stars that invites us into a relationship with the stars again, to sit in contemplation, to listen, to gain this wisdom from the stars. And it connects us with Christ. This part in this, it says, it's not a question of getting enlightened or saved and then acting. When we work to heal the earth will heal us. This is the same thing. My journey with the sacred sciences through this alignment, through the mathematical alignments of the true alignments of the stars, has healed me in such profound ways and brought me back into a deep relationship with God. It's healed me. And the same thing with the earth. The more I fought to save the earth, the more the earth gave me more than I was giving her. She was healing me more than I could ever do for her. And when we're talking about language tonight, we're talking about Aramaic language, because I started to get interested in this after I left the church and wanted to study the Bible in different ways. And I started to read the books that were left out of the Bible. And then I got drawn to, well, what about the translations of this? Then what was the original translation of this? And in the original translation, it is not Yeshua saying that I'm here to save you. Yeshua, Miriam of Magdalene came to transform the world. The word is not save, the word is transform. This is related to alchemy. They were alchemists, they were mystics. The Essenes were mystics, they were alchemists. They studied the stars and herbalism and crystals and the earth and breath work, energy work. And also in Aramaic, Yeshua was not God's only son. The word Yehide was translated wrong. It wasn't God's only son. It was God's firstborn or older brother. Aramaic is a poetic language. It's poetry, and it can be translated in many different ways. It's very similar to Native American languages, indigenous languages, which are poetic. And a lot of those languages have, for the most part, died away. We've lost a lot of indigenous languages, and Aramaic is rarely used in the world now, still used in Assyria, in Syria, in Iraq, and in those who, in parts of the world, are still keeping this language alive. The same with indigenous languages. And when a language dies, there's so much more than the words that are lost, because language is the dwelling place of ideas. And it's a way that we see the world. It's a way that we feel. Even in the Bible, the word was made God. I am the word. We see this in language. And when language is misinterpreted, mistranslated, we get stuck to that. We create a dogma out of it. We get disconnected from truth. That's why tonight we're going to talk a lot about language. And astrology was our first religion. Okay. And I say this because if we think about it, if we think about our ancient ancestors, the religion that united us with God would have been listening to the stars. We would have known where the stars were, when the sun rose, when to plant our seeds, when to harvest. We would follow them daily, yearly. We followed our cycles by them. You would say, I'm so many winters old if you're born in the winter, or I'm so many summers old, right? We would know when to travel if we were nomadic tribes. And the Latin for religion means to unite. So reuniting with God is the original meaning of religion. And then we think about how much religions have disconnected us, created war, created violence, created from the dogma of I'm right, you're wrong, this is the only way. When we look back to the original language, astrology, it was contemplative. It was contemplative. It wasn't a dogma. It was sitting at night by a fire and meditating with the stars and listening. Because the stars and the planets are guides that reunite us with God. When we look at a birth chart or a natal chart, it's this map to the soul that helps us remember who we are. And when we look at the cycles of the planets and the stars and we know them and have a relationship with them, we can witness the cycles of where we have been, where we are moving, so we have an awareness of where we're going. Next week, I'm going to do a class on the spring equinox, on the 4 cycles of the United States and the cycle that we're in now. And I'm going to do my very best to create it in a space of awareness without fear, but awareness, but knowing what we're actually moving through so we can know how to serve the highest good and move out of fear in this time. And that's where right now, like for me, this is my calling, to follow the stars, to see where we've been before. 100 years ago, we had world wars. So how can we look to them and what was happening in the stars then and make different choices now, have an awareness about it? The planets and the stars have always been guides that reunite us with God. The Aramaic language can be traced all the way back to recorded time, the beginning of recorded time. Okay. And the Assyrians, if you ask Assyrians today, they say that it was a language that was brought to them by the angels. It was a language that was brought to earth by angels to expand our consciousness so we could communicate with nature, with the divine world, with the cosmos. And then it's interesting, if you think about it, how this language has been lost. And if the original scrolls were written in that, how much was lost in their translations? Zoroaster, or Zarathustra, he spoke in Aramaic, as did Yeshua and the Essenes, but he was the one that brought to us the vision of the Star of the Magi. And if you want to deep dive into the Star Magi, then the video I did called The Story of the Stars really dives deep into the story of the stars, into the Star of Bethlehem, into the tribe of Judah and what was happening in the stars when Yeshua was born, when he died. So if you want to learn more about that, you can watch that video. So tonight we're going to learn a new word, another word if you've never heard of it, Anthroposophy. Okay, Rudolf Steiner brought this to us in the last 100 years. Okay, and anthropos is the Greek word for human. In Gnosticism, it meant the first human being, or was also referred to Adamus, Adam, the Hebrew meaning for earth, Adam, earth, right? Adam and Eve being divine feminine, Sophia, and is divine feminine wisdom. So here we have Sophia plus logos, wisdom, words, Sophia. And Rudolf Steiner, he brought through this new way of understanding our spiritual world. The idea of this is the wisdom reborn through human beings as co-creators with God, as co-creators with the divine, co-creating with nature in relationship with the whole of cosmos. So if you start to go into this, his whole work was represented by this. And from this idea of co-creating with God, with the divine, with the cosmos, he birthed so many things on the planet. And Astrosophy has come from this. So we must first give thanks to Rudolf Steiner, who also, which I'll talk about next week on the spring equinox, predicted what is happening right now on the planet in this new cycle of Christ consciousness and what we're going through right now, and gave us some wisdom on how to be guided in this cycle that we're going through right now. He lived from 1861 to 1925. So interesting enough, he passed away almost 100 years ago. And when you really dive into this, he studied not only the birth charts, but the death charts, and when a child was conceived, because he followed the stars through all of those cycles to tell a person's story. Okay. And some of the things that he created were the Waldorf schools, biodynamic organic farming, naturopathic medicine. He was an architect, and then part of it was star wisdom. Then comes along Willie Sucher, and he pioneers the spiritual science of astrosophy. When he's 17 years old, which is almost 100 years ago, when he was 17, he first gets introduced to it. And then when he's around 20 years old, he gets called into this work. He learns of Rudolf Steiner's work, and then he learns about his whole philosophy. And he says, well, we have to apply this to the stars then. And so he takes Rudolf Steiner's work with the stars and astrology, and he brings in this work of Astrosophy that we're talking about tonight. And this was his whole life's work, was this reconnection with divine, with God, through our relationship with the stars. He connects geocentric and heliocentric perspective of the stars. So when you start to get into astrology, people talk about this geocentric, which is earth-centered, and then heliocentric, which is sun-centered. And he's written lots of books about it. But the connection of the two, which creates our relationship with God, with Christ, through the stars. He wrote a book on cosmic Christianity, one on the living universe, and several other books on our stars and our relationship with God. So when you're talking about heliocentric, just so we can start to get like a view of Astrosophy, heliocentric means the sun is at the center. When we're talking about the sun at the center, we're talking about Christ, divine, God, our higher self. And geocentric is earth-centered, so our earthly personality, our human self. So combined, that is what it means to be both human and divine, which is the representation of Pisces at the end of the zodiac. This idea that we are both divine and human. If you think about the word constellation and considering, it comes, these words together mean being with the stars. To consider means being with the stars. And then constellation is the embodiment of that, to be in relationship with the stars. And this isn't the story of the stars class, but I wanted to just, since we're talking about astrosophy tonight, astronomy is really the study of the celestial objects in the sky. Astronomers are people that really study the planets and where they are, using telescopes to actually follow the movements of the stars. Of course, there's also high-tech technology now where we can actually look at where the stars are, which is how we can actually go back and see where the planets and the stars were in the life of Yeshua. And then astrophysics, that's the science of applying the laws of physics in space. These are the different ways to apply star knowledge, like astrogeology studies the rocks and terrains and material in space. Astrobiology searches for the life outside of Earth. So, Astrosophy is this new star wisdom that connects us with the ancient star wisdom that connects us with Christ. And this star wisdom is scientific because it's mathematical, it's astronomical. In other words, it uses astronomy and mathematics through the chronologization of the life of Jesus. So what he did in his life's work was to go back and to look at where things happened in the life of Christ connected to what planetary alignments were happening. Where was the moon? Where was the sun? Were there specific conjunctions? Was there meaning in that? And then how can we apply that now? This is what got me drawn to this. So tonight's all about language. So to talk about language, I said in the beginning, I had a hard time saying the word God for a while because I didn't even know what that meant to me. I used universe, source, creator. If you grew up in the church and you struggled with these kind of things, you might understand that. And then I really connected with Yahweh, because Yahweh means the breath of life. The shortest distance to God is a breath. A breath brings us back to God every time. So what is God? Yahweh, the breath of life. It's the creative principle. It's creator. It's the embodiment of love. It's law. It's substance. It's the divine intelligence. And it's power. It's the breath of life that breathes in and through us. It's what gives us creative power. It's what inspires us to create. It's what inspires healing. What is God? This is my definition of God here. And then what is Christ? Christ is the connection, is the connecting link that connects us between our human self and God. So now we're talking about the mind. We're talking about consciousness. So the Christ mind, or Christ consciousness, is not a person. Christ is not a person. It is the highest aspect of our consciousness. It's conscious of both God and human. It connects us between the two. As above, so below. We're going to end this tonight by talking about Aquarius. Okay, so when people talk about what is this Christ consciousness, what is Christ, we're talking about the highest aspect that links us to God. So if you follow like Joe Dispenza's work, he doesn't talk about Christ, but he's teaching the work of the higher consciousness, how to use our higher consciousness to create, to heal ourselves. And then, of course, what is humans? We are the personality, and we have the capacity to use the mind, God, the subjective mind, our subconscious that bridges God, and the human mind. So to be human means that we have the power to use our Christ consciousness, the highest aspect of our consciousness, to connect ourselves with God. And I believe that Astrosophy is one way that supports us in this remembering, in this relationship. So that gives us some language to work with tonight. So let's go all the way back to 6000 BC and who Zarathustra was, or Zoroaster. Zoroaster meaning radiant star. He was a Gnostic prophet, and he founded Zoroastrianism, which the language was Aramaic. He also founded the Persian culture, and he trained the very first magi. Okay. He was ready to lead King Cyrus the Great, and he introduced us to the 4 royal stars, which are the 4 directions: Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, Leo. And he had this vision of the future Messiah, the future king. And his vision showed him planetary alignments that were telling him. And so he trained the Magi on what to look for in the stars. Okay. And he created the very first natal chart, the very first horoscope that followed the descent of the soul from conception to birth, because that was the original way that we understood a soul's blueprint. That's the word that I use when I do my readings, a soul's blueprint. That was originally that you followed the soul's descent from conception to birth over those 9 months, because there was a story laid out in the stars over those 9 months that told about who you were, what you were here to do on earth, the story you were here to write on earth. Okay. So Zarathustra teaches the Magi, teaches his disciple to start meditating with the stars. And that's the whole point of tonight. And that's the whole point of Astrosophy, is for us to have a reconnection with the planets and the stars in relationship, as we also have a deeper relationship with nature. The way that Rudolf Steiner talks about biodynamics, he's talking about relating our planting seasons and our harvests in a permaculture sense, but based on where the stars were. Okay. And Zarathustra brought through these original teachings that started to get us in alignment with that. Then also in indigenous culture, most indigenous cultures have oral tradition. They do not write a lot of things down. Things were so sacred that they could never be written down. That's their way. I spent a lot of time in the North and South Dakota, the Lakota, and have learned a lot about oral tradition and why you're not meant to photograph ceremonies. You're not meant to write certain things down because they're too sacred. They were too sacred. They were so sacred that only the trees held their stories, and it only got passed on by sitting in storytelling and listening. And in Lakota oral tradition, they had a story too, a vision of a fallen star. And Left Huron called him the Messiah. Black Elk named him the Holy One or Savior. And this fallen star was the bringer of light. He was the protector. So this knowing this consciousness traveled from tribe to tribe, and this story was recognized, repeated, and revered all around the world. So it wasn't just Zarathustra, but that's who began the Persian Empire. And so we know that through oral history, and they also wrote things down. But in indigenous culture, we have a very similar story. And their oral history also talks about his miracles, but the stories are different than how we hear the miracles. And they're beautiful, like the story of the seven sisters, talking about the Pleiades. And there's more about that in the Story of the Stars video. So by the 2nd century, the work of Zarathustra and the Magi starts to fade. After Jesus dies, what we see happen is a disconnection from his teaching. So his teachings are in Aramaic. He starts a church that's in Aramaic. And soon after, and they are using the stars. They are using herbalism. They are using energy to heal. And then what comes along is Ptolemy. And when you study him, his relatives, their bloodline has a great influence in Rome, in Greece. And of course, we know the whole history of Roman Empire and Jesus's crucifixion, and then what comes out of the Roman Empire after. So what happens then is that there's a shift in how we view the stars, in our relationship with the stars. And the Roman Empire, which takes over most of the world, Ptolemy creates this map. And that map is the tropical or Western astrology that we use today. That map was created over 2,000 years ago. And every 72 years, we move 1 degree out of alignment with that map. Because every 72 years, the wobble of the earth creates a shift, and we move 1 degree out of alignment with it. Okay? So his influence was so big that he replaces Zoroastrianism, the Babylonians, Egyptians, the Greek astrologers, all the way that they use the stars. And the people that continue to use sidereal, continue to meditate and pray with the stars, are in India, which is Vedic astrology, and indigenous people. They were not influenced by this. They continue to carry on with their ways and their practices to follow the stars to this day. And it's my hope that Astrosophy can reawaken this remembrance and a relationship with the stars once again, so people can start to see where we have been and where we're headed, and have a relationship with it again. Not to worship the stars, not to foretell the future, but to have an awareness and a relationship. And tonight I wanted to talk about Aquarius, so that you can kind of get a feel of the translations of Astrosophy as well, because the translations are different. If you study the tropical Western astrology system, really the words are used through fear, through shadow. You think about Gemini as the dark and evil twin, and Scorpio is dark and depressed, and these kind of shadowy aspects, which of course we have a shadow within everything. But the way that the stars are translated through Astrosophy and through the ancient text, so beautiful, such a divine remembrance. So tonight, since we are right at the end of Aquarius, the sun is still in Aquarius, beginning to transition into Pisces. March 17th, the sun moves right into Pisces. So since we're here at the tail end, I wanted to talk about Aquarius tonight, so we can feel into that relationship with Aquarius. And to begin, let's just go back a little bit, because I believe if you follow the story of the zodiac, beginning in Aries, moving all the way through Pisces, it's a beautiful transformational journey that we go on. And remember, in the beginning, I said Yeshua came to transform the world, and there's this message in the stars that's a transformational journey that takes us all the way through the zodiacs and teaches us so much. So if we back up to say let's say to Scorpio season. Scorpio season is a time of death and rebirth and going into the underworld, excavating our shadows so that we can really touch it more so into our deep intuition. It's a beautiful season that moves then into the season of Libra to create balance in our lives, to create harmony in our lives. And then when we're in the season of Sagittarius, we're integrating both our human self, that centaur, the human and the divine. We're grounding and integrating ourselves, and we're learning to take aim to see where have we been misaligned, shooting bent arrows into the wind, wasting energy, and where can we really get ourselves into soul alignment. To then move into Capricorn, and then Capricorn season is a time to create structure. It's a goat that trudges up the mountain, right? And it can feel like a lot of resistance, a lot of stress, a lot of work in that time. We're creating structure in the time of Capricorn. And so the goat's path, Capricorn, feels like moving against the current, can feel like things are hard. But when you do the work in Capricorn to create some structure for spirit to move through us, when we get into the season of Aquarius, it brings these free flowing waters, because we've journeyed through all these aspects of ourselves. We're almost to the end of the transformational journey. Aquarius and Pisces ends it. So if we've done all of our work through the year, through the whole story of the zodiac, by the time we get to Aquarius, things should start to feel like they're opening up. We should start to feel a little bit more free. We should start to flow more like water. So Aquarius then is to know, as above, so below. It's feeling the source of all life. And it moves us towards our destiny. So let's look at some of the miracles that Yeshua performed in Aquarius seasons. And this is where I'm like, what? Can't make stuff up. So Yeshua reminds us and invites us into divine abundance in the season of Aquarius, which, of course, if we're looking at where we're headed in the future, we're here to bring in that heaven on earth. Pisces is heaven on earth. And so if Aquarius points us in that direction, is moving us in that way, it's also a remembrance that we are created to be abundant. We are divine, abundant beings. So it's all about prosperity and abundance, Aquarius season as well. So the wedding, when Jesus turned water into wine, was like right in the beginning of, or maybe it's, no, I think it's at 10 degrees, something like that. And that's when he turns water into wine. So we have this miracle of water. And Aquarius was seen as the waterman that holds the vessel, the urn that pours water over humanity, that pours abundance over humanity, that reminds us that we're abundant, reminds us of who we are. Which is the whole meaning behind as above, so below, to remember who we are in that Christ, where Christ connects us to being both God and human. So we can start to see this. If you take the deeper aspects into this miracle, he's taking this vessel and creating miracles through the vessel. The vessel can be connected to us as well, that we are the vessel. And what can be transformed through us, through Christ, it happens in the Aquarius season. We also have the feeding of the 5,000 that happens right after that, right? So the sun is in Aquarius, and during the feeding of the 5,000 is aligned with a star called Deneb, which is it's the star that it's one of the most powerful stars in our galaxy. It's in the Orion arm. So we have this really powerful star alignment when the feeding of the 5,000 happens. And that parable, that story, that miracle has been translated in a few ways. And I don't think it matters which way you translate it. It's what message it brings to you. Do I believe that the miracle could have happened, that you put fish in a basket and it multiplied and multiplied? Absolutely. Other people believe that when he was speaking at that to the 5,000, he spoke to their hearts so much that everybody got out of their bags what they had to share and shared it, and there was enough for everybody because everybody shared what they had because they were so drawn to open their hearts in that moment, and that's what abundance means. Either way, it's the miracle of abundance that this earth gives us more than enough, that we are more than enough, right? And yes, that we are the vessel for alchemy to happen, right? So no matter what you look at it, that feeding the 5,000 is a parable of abundance, and it happens through Aquarius. So there's this other symbol of prosperity here. Then we have walking on the water. And this one is more about the elements. And we're going to talk about water and air in a minute. But this one is like, what is he teaching us in the miracle of walking on water? He has power over the elements, with the elements, not over the elements, but with the elements. When he says, be not afraid, it is I. It's another of one of the bazillion times in the text that Yeshua's message is, do not be afraid. Be not afraid. Fear is the enemy, right? So, and another one is when he protects the ships at sea. And then there's also the healing of the paralyzed man by the pool of Bethesda that happens right in the beginning of Aquarius season. There's also lots of stories recorded in Aquarius that have to do with baptisms. So we have all these messages about Aquarius, the season of water, prosperity, returning to our divine prosperity, our divine abundance. So this is the teaching of Astrosophy. This is what it brings to us. It's reconnecting us with the ancient messages that have been lost since the time of Yeshua's time on earth. And next week when I do the class on spring equinox, you can see where it was prophesied, this new coming of Christ, this rebirth of the divine Sophia, of the divine feminine right now that integrates them both. That's what we're moving through now. Also, it is not Aquarius season. We're not in the age of Aquarius, not till 2375. We're in the age of Pisces. So that's a misalignment through the tropical system too. People are like, oh, we're already there. Nope, we're not there yet. The age of Aquarius doesn't happen until 2375. So we're still in the age of Pisces. So language. Aquarius reminds us of the birth waters of invention. So if we think about creation too, if we've taken this whole journey of the soul through the zodiac and we get to the time of Aquarius, it is a time for invention, the creative waters will be flowing if you've done your work. If you've been devoted in this season to really moving through the descent of the soul and the rising of the soul for the last few years, since God brought this Astrosophy to me, I have been following the stars, the zodiacs, as well as like planetary alignments and conjunctions, things like that, as well as human design and the gene keys, which I write out in alignment with this mathematics of Astrosophy, because human design and the gene keys are amazing. I love them. The gene keys are my favorite. Both of them I work with, all three of these sacred sciences, but those two systems were coded through the Western tropical system. That's because that is the system that is most used on the planet. And it teaches us something. There's a great teaching in knowing your human design in the tropical system. That people will say, well, that is me. I can just recognize myself in that. But there's also something so profound in the connection to our soul. If God gave me a blueprint of my soul from the first time I took a breath, from the moment that my parents conceived me until the time I take my last breath, I would like to know the actual mathematics of where the planets actually were. I don't want to use a map that was written 2,000 years ago. I wouldn't use a map to travel right now that was written 2,000 years ago, because it wouldn't be true. It wouldn't be aligned. Okay. So then the last few years, I've been following the stars, human design, and the gene keys to actually what we're moving through. And it has been so profound in my own journey that now I support other people who are interested in this and want to walk that journey in curiosity and listening as well. So for me, this season in Capricorn, it was like I felt the calling to get myself structured. And last year I was kind of working in it, but this year, after being the second year that I've really moved every week with what we're going through and really tried to contemplate it and be with God in the season and be with the planets in that way. It was like January, I went through so much, and then it was like, okay, I got to get myself organized. I got to get myself structured. I got to do this thing. And then when it came time for Aquarius, it was like creative energy was just flowing. I felt light. I felt more free. I felt hopeful, excited, ready. And then I birthed these new things that I'm creating, my new memberships, my new things that I'm doing. It all just flowed. Even though the idea came a long time ago, it wasn't time to birth them till now. And I just sit in awe of how it unfolds. So some of the things that our Aquarius connects us with in language. Aquarius is a sign that is an air sign, right? Aquarius is an air sign, but it's also connected with water. So it's air and water, as above, so below. So some of the things that Aquarius calls us into are inspiration, innovation, freedom, visionary work, looking to the future, spaciousness. If we think about, and Joe Dispenza has some meditations on this that are really beautiful, like thinking about our centers, our chakras, our energy body as spaciousness that God can fill. We could also think of it, the vessel, the Aquarius, the vessel, that if we empty ourselves, if we create enough stillness, enough silence, enough spaciousness to allow God to fill us, to allow the breath to move through us, to allow spirit to move through us, what's possible? Miracles and magic are possible. So Aquarius is all about spaciousness. If we did the work in Sagittarius and Capricorn, we released the things that didn't serve us anymore. We emptied the vessel. So that when we come into this season, we're an empty vessel for God to fill. Air, that's the sign of air. So it's also meditative power. So it's a connection with our higher consciousness by creating the structure in Capricorn. If we don't have a structure to have a morning routine or a time or an evening routine or a routine period where we give ourselves the silence, the self-loving space to listen, then it's not going to happen for us. We have to create the structure to have that. You have to get to know how you work, how you operate in this world. The more you know yourself, the more you can create that structure that supports your unique design, your unique being. I'm highly connected to water. So I know that if I'm feeling stuck, if I'm feeling anxiety, I know that for me, the earth gives me medicine and water gives me medicine. I can get in a salty bath or in the salty ocean and my energy field is cleared. It's something I know about myself. I know myself well in that. So we have to know ourselves to know how that we can create the spaciousness for God to move in it. And that requires slowing down, which is really hard for humanity. It's really hard for parents. As parents, we really have to create more kind of structure to be able to that when we have younger children and things like that. Not even younger children, but all ages of children. That's practice, but we have to have that structure to do that. Then part of the other gifts of Aquarius are anticipation. When we create the spaciousness, then we are listening and we can sense what's happening in the future. And this, y'all, is what I am seeing in creating this relationship with Astrosophy. My friends used to say that if we ever had an apocalypse, that I would be the first to die because I'd be running out, like trying to rescue everyone, and I'd be the first to die. or I'd be so brokenhearted that I just would be frozen, or I'd have so much panic, right? Because I've done my work, because I've also like really studied what's happening in the stars, where we are in the cycles. Yes, I feel everything really strongly, and yes, I grieve, and yes, I cry, but I also am walking in these two worlds where my heart and my nervous system, because I've done a lot of self-care with my nervous system and my heart feel stronger so that I can be present in this time and know how to take care of myself, and then know how to have an abundance to support other people as well. It's really powerful. The nervous system has a lot to do with it. I'm really grateful for Network Chiropractic, for Dr. Chelsea and Brian, who I worked with for quite a while and still work with some, for their work in Network Chiropractic to move the bodies, for acupuncture, for breath work, for all these things. There's so many tools for us that can support us. Aquarius that also then brings us a sensitivity and empathy, but also a strength to that. So we're not crumbling because we have an awareness and we have strength, and we have deep empathy, so we can put ourselves in other people's shoes and love people deeply. Because we're almost into Pisces, which is the full expression of love. It also gives us discernment. In the gene keys, we move through discernment, revolution, rebirth, lightness, and rapture. We move through these gene keys in the season of Aquarius. When I don't know if you I know that some people in this know what the gene keys are, but for those who are watching later who might not know what the gene keys are, the gene keys looks at our 64 genetic codings, our DNA codings, and looks at each of them as a message for us, a part of who we are. And when we can contemplate the shadow of that gene key, that genetic coding, that's where our ancestral wounding is kind of wound around our DNA. And when we can contemplate it, it allows us to unwind ourselves, unravel ourselves from that victim state, from that fear state. So the shadow of each gene key is a fear state. It's a lower vibration. It's a lower frequency. It's not right or wrong. It's not bad or good. It's just something to be aware of. And it helps us to understand our deep trauma and ancestral wounding on this planet. And when we can contemplate that and be aware of it, and then contemplate the Siddhic level, which is the highest state, the divine. If we look at that, that's a God state. That's the highest state of our consciousness. If we use our consciousness to contemplate that higher state of love, and it starts to pull us out of that fear, it starts to pull us out of the shadow, and then we're at that gift frequency where we have a gift then to share with the world, because we really contemplated this fear and we've transformed it. We've alchemized it to a gift, to our medicine. Your greatest suffering, your greatest wounds ancestrally and individually, when we face those and walk beside them and transform them, that's also our greatest gifts to share with the world, our greatest medicine. So the gene keys in human design shows us our actual soul's blueprint to what we came here with uniquely in our design. And we can look at that and transform our own unique design, our own shadows into gifts and medicine that we came here to share. And then on a collective level, we can move through the gene keys through the story of the 12 zodiacs through the year, from Aries all the way to Pisces. And we can feel what we're also moving through as a collective. And then you'll also kind of recognize that when you get to a gene key that's your specific coding, you might feel it stronger. You might go through it more, and that's an opportunity to really alchemize it when you're in alignment with that gene key or that genetic coding or that human design gate. And I know I'm using like a lot of words that some of you might not understand. I and many people teach classes on, understanding and simplifying human design and gene keys so we can really understand that and contemplate it. But these are some of the gene keys that we move through in Aquarius. You can't make it up. Rebirth and rapture. I am a water protector. I hope that you are as well. In 2016, I spent 7 blessed months in Standing Rock as we stood for the water. And water is life. And that is the prayer of a water protector. We are 70% water. This earth is made of water, and Aquarius invites us to really have a deep relationship with water. What kind of water are you consuming is big. Contamination of our waters is big to contemplate. And understanding the water and how water flows and how water holds memory within ourselves, within the earth, it's powerful. We do a whole long class on water. But water also reminds us of our divine birthright to prosper. Prosperity is the pouring of abundance from the cosmic Christ. And that is the message of Aquarius in the season of Aquarius through Astrosophy. That's the message of Aquarius. In tropical system, it's somebody who, is interested in future technology or has futuristic ideas, things like that. That's all good. But when you get to this is juicy. This is like the depth of it. And for me, it really it's alive in me when I hear this, that pouring of abundance, the water pouring out, that reminds me that there's always enough. There's more than enough. I have more than enough for you. The affirmation in Aquarius is, may the limited yield to the unlimited. You are infinite. You are unlimited. You are prosperous. And when you forget that, think about Aquarius. Think about water. And then we can also think about how our water systems are being poisoned all over the planet. And also then think about, what do we do about that? How do we support our families? How do we support ourselves in understanding water and protecting our waters? The Aquarius challenge is also to temper the sense of boundless freedom with alignment of truth and our higher purpose that's guided and shaped by the power of love. And I'll put these in the class, like where I'll put the recording, because I know that there's a lot of depth in that, and it's something to really just contemplate. But it's through the power of love and understanding our higher selves that we create an infinite life, that we allow ourselves to create miracles. Yeshua came here to say, you will do far greater works than I. That Yeshua came here to not save us, but remind us who we are, to transform the world by reminding us of these teachings. The Essenes, the brotherhood, the sisterhood of the Essenes, they also spoke in Aramaic, and this was the teachings. These were the teachings. It's interesting, in the Bible, they would talk about how the disciples would have men cloaked in white that would come and give them advice. And the Essenes were known to wear white. And so it makes a lot of sense when you think about that the Essenes were guiding the disciples as well. The goal of Aquarius is to reflect the angelic or divine blueprint of our soul above, and then the work of the etheric body of Christ for the earth below. So that's the as above, so below to contemplate. Our angelic divine blueprint connected with Christ. And your soul's blueprint gives you a map to your soul in that way to really contemplate it. There's also deep teachings in the prophecy of the coming of Christ written in the stars through Aquarius. When we talk about the age of Aquarius, it's talking about the coming of Christ, the recoming, where we actually all remember who we are, one with God, all related, in harmony with the earth, what we all came here and hold in our hearts. If you were drawn to this class, and I know that you hold that in your heart. And there in the Bible, it talks about the coming of Christ, he'll come on the clouds. Well, Aquarius relates to air and water, which relates to clouds, which is really interesting. That makes rain, that makes water, that pours out and nurtures the soil. I love all of this. So how do we discern truth, or what to take in and not take in? That's kind of the message of Aquarius as well, to start to use discernment, because there's so much information out there. So how do we discern what to take in and what to not take in? And the only way to do that is to still the waters. So even the message where he's walking on water, it's teaching us about creating a stillness in our life, to create an inner place of calmness within ourselves, to discern truth. I mean, I've inspired all my clients that I coach and anybody who comes to my classes and friends and family to turn the news off as much as possible right now. I think it's really important to be aware, but not to find this balance in between being aware of what's happening, but not taking too much of that in, and creating more time than that to really listen to your own heart, to God's voice in your soul, to what you're here to do right now, because that's what's most important. Because let me tell you, if what's written in the stars is true, we're going to go on some level through worse things. But at the same time, there's so many miracles, so much magic, so much love, so much healing happening. And if that's where we want to focus our energy on, that's where we want to focus our hearts on. That's where inspiration comes, to create that stillness, to know what you're here to do right now, and to focus on that. I used to be such an activist of like, I'm going to go out there and save the world. That comes from that idea of Jesus came to save, I'm a savior. And then I shifted that to creating peace within me. The only way I can change the world is creating peace within myself, so that my heart is so open, so loving, that people see God in me. That's the work that I want to do. And that takes learning to love myself, learning to forgive myself, learning to forgive others, learning how to love others, learning to love people that are difficult, which is just a reflection of ourselves. So Aquarius then is this path of initiation that leads us into deeper faith by creating still waters, by creating stillness within ourselves, okay? And then this radical faith, this radical love creates the actual freedom. And Aquarius represents freedom. And that's what we're here for. So as above, so below, on earth as it is in heaven, the kingdom of God is within. I've cried so many times today putting together just the canvas of this. Like I had it kind of all journaled out. And then as it came through today, it was like, I was vibrating all day. I had soul chills all day. I cried all day, just remembering that there's so many beautiful things happening on the planet right now. And if we turn off the news and we turn off those stories and we tune in, we can feel that. If you go out into the world and start having conversations with people, you can really feel that that's happening. And the more that we tune into our hearts and tune into that love, the more we're going to create that. This Aquarius is as above, so below. The kingdom of God is within. I and the Father are one. Christ consciousness is practicing that, practicing radical faith. One of my favorite books that I have come across in the last couple of years is called God Works Through Faith. And it's about consciousness and the radical work of faith through Yeshua's work and through the scientific aspects of faith. So it's like Joe Dispenza's work, but on this level of Christ consciousness. And it's profound. Because radical faith is power, and radical love is our greatest power on earth. And this is the Aquarius season that leads us into Pisces. And Pisces, which then we get the idea for Christianity of the fish. Pisces points us towards the future. It points us towards heaven. It's the two fish that are pointing us towards the future and towards heaven. And it's the deepest capacity to love. It's the embodiment of being both human and divine. And that's the season we're moving into next. I love Pisces season. So even in tropical astrology, when you think about Pisces, you think about people that are like, oh, really out here in the clouds. But really, the work of Pisces is the feet. Where are your feet planted? Where are your feet headed? Where are you moving? And are you integrating the divine part of yourself and the human part of yourself? Because there are so many parts of religion and the spiritual community that are all about ascension, enlightenment. Heaven, I'm going to go to heaven one day. And there's a forgetting in that of the original translation of Jesus's work, which was the kingdom of God is here. The kingdom of heaven is here. You weren't cast out of the Garden of Eden. Earth is that. And we are here to remember that. And as we restore the earth, she's going to restore us individually and collectively. So, what if the soul of a human means something to the stars? These are contemplations that I came up with today, thinking about this. So what if this isn't just us listening to the stars? What if it isn't just a one-way relationship? And this is what I found in the last few years with this shift. I have all the chills. With this shift in Astrosophy, this is what I found. I was looking for answers there. But what I've found now is it's a two-way relationship, just like my relationship with trees and with the birds and with the earth and with you. We're here to listen to the stars for guidance and to the planets of the cosmos, but we're also here to be something. They're telling us. They have held the memory. They hold our soul's memory of all the incarnations. They hold the earth's memory. When we pass on, it's all held in their memory. They're holding all that memory. And they're up there shining and speaking to us to remind us, to help us remember. Because they want us to work with them. And next week, when I talk about the solstice or the equinox and what we're moving through, that's the foundation of it. They've been speaking to us and they're telling us what we're moving through. And they're asking for us to do something too, to be in relationship with them. They're telling us that we mean something to them. There's a relationship here that needs to be healed. That relationship with the cosmic Christ. What if our relationship to one another, to the stars, to nature, to God, what if it's our relationship to one another that has to be healed and aligned and nurtured now? So I want you to think about that. And what if we are not just helpless objects of the movements and the rhythms of the stars? In other words, in a lot of astrology, which is why people get really turned off by astrology, or they create astrology as a dogma, like, this is who I am. No, this is what it is. Mercury's in retrograde, and this is why my computer won't work, and this is why it is. And they use astrology to blame and to judge, just like certain religions do. So what if we look at it a different way? An Astrosophy is in contemplation, and we don't look at the stars as, I'm victim of the stars. I'm helpless to the stars. Oh, Mercury's in retrograde, everything's going to fall apart. No, I work in relationship with it. So that's the shift in Astrosophy, is that we are in relationship. We are not blaming or being victims of the movements and the rhythms of the stars. When the moon is full and it's affecting us in a certain way, we allow it. We sit and listen. We let it open us up. We let it move us, inspire us, heal us. Because we're in a relationship, we invite God into that. So this helps us move from victim consciousness to Christ consciousness, that bridge between God and our human self. What if we are actually co-creators with the whole cosmos? What if we choose to be co-creators with God, with nature? Astrosophy is an invitation to be co-creators with God. Rudolf Steiner's work was devoted to reconnecting us through science and spirituality to reconnect us with God as co-creators, not as victims, not as helpless beings that needed to be rescued or saved, but as co-creators with God. And that's beautiful to me. So I'm going to end with two things tonight. Paying attention is a form of reciprocity with the living world, receiving the gifts with open eyes and open heart. That's from Braiding Sweetgrass. And it's this idea again of reciprocity, of mutual reciprocity in our relationship with God, with nature, and the divine that has been disconnected. And we see it in the earth. We see it. We can see it. If all the religions were living in relationship, we would have churches that were growing permaculture gardens and have place for homeless to sleep, and had natural healing centers. That's what the church would look like. And I think that there's a rebirth. I believe that there's a rebirth happening in it. I can see it. But we got to do the work to create this, reconnect ourselves with nature in the way of reciprocity. So think about the word mutual reciprocity. We are in relationship. There's a give and receive. And if you've never read The Honorable Harvest, beautiful prayer to live your life by, The Honorable Harvest. That's also in Braiding Sweetgrass, but you can look up The Honorable Harvest. So in prayer for the remembrance of mutual reciprocity, that was my offering today in sharing this master heart with you. We are all related. And I wanted to end with the kingdom of God, with the prayer. So in the Gospel of Luke, it says the kingdom of God is within you. In the Gospel of Thomas, which was left out of the Bible, the kingdom is in your centers and is about you. Interesting. I won't go into it tonight, but the 7 chakras are related to the 7 heavens. We're related to the Lord's Prayer. And we could go deeper and deeper. I wanted to read to you, to close out, these 2 prayers that are written differently than the Lord's Prayer because they were translated through Aramaic. So Heavenly Source, Allah, or Aloha, the breath of life. Thou who art everywhere, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, here and now, forevermore. Fill us with the power of your mercy. Free us from the fetters with which we bind each other. Lead us out of our temptation, free us from ourselves. Give us the strength to be at one with thee. Teach us the true power of forgiveness. May this holy moment be the ground from which our future actions grow. I invite you to close your eyes, and I'm going to read this next one. Just take some deep breaths in and invite God to move through you, through us, through the collective. Heavenly Source, Aloha, the breath of life. You who are everywhere. Blessed be your holy vibration. Kindle us in the fire of your love. Here and now, forevermore. Open our hearts to the power of compassion. Free us from the fetters with which we bind ourselves and each other. Lead us out of temptation. Let us repose in the higher self so that we can be nearer to you. Forgive us and let us forgive until our actions are at one with your holy moment. Amen. Thank you for being here. I am going to open up for questions just here in a second. But if this inspires you, I know several of you are in the groups that are the memberships that God has created through me that I put off for a long time. If you're interested in journeying through the stars, human design and the gene keys, in love and prayer and contemplation, there's always a lot of astrology groups out there that were like, what's the current transits? And people were always asking me, well, what are we actually transiting through? So I wanted to create a way that I could support people to know where we're actually moving through. Oh, the moon wasn't actually in Virgo, So I created 2 different monthly membership communities to support us in this. So Living Stars is a way for you to connect with the stars each month through Astrosophy. Those calls will be in alignment with this Astrosophy. So I'll be teaching and guiding through the actual translations in Astrosophy. So what I'd like it to be is like, I'm going to share what we're about to move through in the sun, or where the new moon and the full moon will be that month. So you can prepare yourself ahead of time to know what we're getting ready to move through, or if there's a big transit or an eclipse. So those calls will be on the last of each month, the last Monday night of each month at 7 p.m. And some of you are in that. So I'm excited. The last Monday of this month, we'll start that. And that's for Astrosophy, for astrology. For those of you who are really into human design and the gene keys and you want to go deeper, luminary love leaders, loving light leaders here on the planet. And let me tell you, most people that when I read your soul's blueprint and you're here to lead, you're not actually out there doing the things that you're like, I'm here to be a leader, because usually the real love leaders on the planet are pretty humble and loving and maybe aren't leading in the same way, but we're being called to lead through love. And so luminary love leaders is to really move through the seasons with the highest prayer of love for the collective and ourselves and our families and our communities. And so those we're going to meet. You'll also meet on that Living Star call with us at the last Monday of the month. And then the love leaders will meet twice, first and third Mondays at noon Eastern Standard Time. And we'll drop into what we're moving through in human design and the gene key. So we can really contemplate those shadow states and the gift and the city and really activate love on the planet. And each of those communities will have you'll have the Living Star resource, and then the Luminary Love Leaders resource, and those you'll have a library of resources as we move through the year. Whatever comes through, I'll be putting them in the library for you. So books, or what we're moving through, the recordings of the calls, contemplations, affirmations, journal things, whatever comes through will be put in that library. And then also we'll have a Telegram group for each, so we can start co-creating with people. I have people in different countries that are talking about joining, and I would like this to be a place for us to really activate love on the planet and co-create with other people who are inspired, so we can start to connect with people and co-create together. So you can start to share your medicine. The deeper part that I feel wants to come through in this is my heart and soul are with Indigenous people. And I have so many Indigenous friends who have such deep, beautiful medicine. And I want to hire them to come onto some of these calls and share their medicine. So part of the monthly membership community fees will be supporting different things like that through the year. So we can have some guest speakers as well come through and share with them. So if that interests you, let me know. If you're in it, I am so excited. Like, I always get excited about things that I'm creating. This just feels so exciting to me. It feels like I know that people love to love, like I love to love, are going to be coming together, and we're just going to love to love together. And as we move through the next things that we're moving through on the planet, that's what we're called to, is to love more. So when those people around us are going through things, we can hold them, we can nurture people, we can love. Yeah, that's what it's all about. And we can support each other in that. We can hold each other. So yeah, that's coming up. And then later on, in the next month or so, the next round of Divine Alchemy will start. And that's a real deep dive. Some of you have already been through that with me. That's a deep dive into your soul's blueprint. So I love you. If any of that calls to you, reach out to me, whether you're watching this now or later. And I'm going to stop the recording, and then we can have some Q&A if you all have any questions or things you want to comment on. I love you.